In this video, I'm going to do this problem, and this problem asks us to download monthly historical stock prices for Microsoft Corporation, ExxonMobil Corporation, and S&P 500 index from January 2010 to May 2018 from Yahoo Finance. And using historical simple return, calculate beta for each stock and beta for equally weighted portfolio consisting of these two stocks. And also, the question asks us to see the relationship between individual stocks betas and portfolio beta. In order to answer this question, we have to download historical stock prices for Microsoft, ExxonMobil, and S&P 500 index for the time period. Since I have another video explaining on how to download historical stock price from Yahoo Finance, I'm not going to do it here. I want to start with an Excel file that has all the data we need. So let's start. So this Excel file has historical stock price for ExxonMobil, Microsoft, and S&P 500. And we need to compute beta for each of these stock and also the portfolio. And remember, the portfolio is equally weighted, meaning 50% money is being invested on ExxonMobil and 50% is being spent or invested on Microsoft. Right? So before we go any further, we need to compute return, and let me compute return. So return for XOM equals to, start with the second time period, right? So current price minus the previous price over the previous price, right? Once you compute this, and you can drag it to the left to get for others because they are next to each other. So you can compute for Microsoft, dragging to the right, and for S&P 500 index you can drag it to the right. So once you have computed for all these three for the second time period, you can just double click on the square box, and now it computes the return for all the months. Now I also need historical portfolio returns. So in order to compute this, what I have to do is I have to combine the individual stock returns and compute portfolio, and that equals to 50% times the XOM return plus 50% times the MSFT return. So if you compute for one period, right, you can double click it, or before I do that, let me change the format here. So once I change the format, I can double click on the square box and it gives me the historical portfolio return. So once I have this, now I can go and compute beta. So remember, I have given three ways to compute beta in the slide. I have not listed the one which I will be talking in the next module. So you can use the covariance function to compute the beta. You can use the slope functions, and I'm going to use slope because it's shorter and easier. So look at how you compute the portfolio beta. So if you want to compute the beta for XOM, it simply equals to slope. So here's the slope, and it says the Y values here, return of the stock that you are computing the beta for. So in this case, return of XOM, right? XOM and comma return of the market, and we are using S&P 500 index as a market proxy, so we can choose its return as a market return. So once you choose this, right, you can close the bracket and hit enter, and that gives you the beta for XOM, ExxonMobil. Similarly, you can compute beta for Microsoft. That would be equals to, again, slope, right, slope and return of Microsoft, okay, comma the return of the market. Alright, so once you do this, again you can close the bracket and then hit enter, and that gives you the beta for Microsoft. Similarly, if you want to compute the beta for portfolio, then you do this, slope And this time you are computing beta for portfolio, so you have to select the return of the portfolio first, okay, and then comma your market return. So if you do this, and it gives us the portfolio beta. All right, so let's look at here. So the portfolio beta is 0.98, XOM beta is 0.86, whereas the Microsoft beta is 1.1. So the beta is very useful, and I'm not going to spend much time, but let me say here, beta measures the systematic risk, meaning how risky the stock is as compared to the market. And if the beta is equals to 1, that means the stock is as risky as the average market. If the beta is less than 1, that means the stock is less risky than the average market. And if the beta is more than 1, then the stock is considered to be riskier than the average market. And also beta is used widely in order to make a portfolio. Stocks with a lower beta are usually called defensive stock, and stocks with the higher beta more than 1 are usually called aggressive stock. And based on the economic cycle, sometime we have to make aggressive portfolio, sometime we have to make defensive portfolio, and people often use the value of beta in order to make a aggressive or defensive portfolio. So now I want to go to the last part of the question, and the last part of the question also says what is the relationship between individual stock beta and portfolio beta. And let's look at here. The portfolio beta is 0.98, right? And individual beta is 0.86 and 1.1. So let's find out the weighted average of individual betas and see what happens. So weighted average means 50% is being invested on XOM. So 50% times the beta of XOM, all right? 50% times the beta of XOM plus 50% times the beta of Microsoft. So that should be the same as the portfolio beta. So that means, let's look at this. This guy minus this guy. That should be equal to 0, right? Which means the portfolio beta is the weighted average of individual beta, and that always holds. So if you are supposed to find the portfolio beta, sometime what you can do is you can compute individual beta and you can find the weighted average, meaning multiply what proportion of money is being invested on each stock with the beta and sum them all, and that should give us the portfolio beta. So that's all.